your music. I thank you so much for Nadura, Sam Alcoff, J. Maria Studio, John Hamilton, Ravi Karen, Hani Masood, Dennis Moynihan, Safwat Mazal. Our executive directors, Julie Crosby. Special thanks to Becca Staley, John Randolph, Paul Powell, Mike DeFilippo, Miguel Noguera. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. Thank you.
The viewpoints expressed in this program are the opinions of the people expressing them, and not necessarily those of Fresh Air Incorporated, its staff, or its board of directors.
Hi, this is Al McFarlane, host of The Conversation with Al McFarlane. You're listening to 90.3 FM, KFAI, Minneapolis. I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to The Conversation with Al McFarlane. I'm glad to be here and glad to have you along as well. And thanks to my friend and colleague, Yusuf Mgini, Ndugu Yusuf Mgini, who sat in for me last week. I had a dental appointment, and he was gracious enough to join the call. And thank you for listening. Yusuf is one of the great communicators in our community, in our country. And it's just wonderful to have his support. And to have your support, those of you listening here on KFAI, we want to invite you to support the growth of this program, The Conversation with Al McFarlane. And the way you do that is simply by connecting with us on our online platform. We're live streaming to YouTube. It's YouTube/Insight News MN. Go there, no cost. Subscribe, like, share. Let people know that you're here and participate. We have a live chat on that channel. You can drop a question, make a statement. Let me know that you want to be brought on live. We'll hook you up, bring you in. We want to hear your voice, your point of view. We also are streaming live to Facebook and LinkedIn and to Twitter. And so no matter where you're connecting, let me tell you how much we value you. And we are inviting you to help us grow this engagement, this way for us to be in community together. And we do that by talking. My job is I'm a reporter. I'm a newsman. And what I do for a living is ask questions. And I enjoy asking questions. And over the years, right here on this station, I think I've become quite good at it. And it's a question of listening. Listening intently, listening actively, and really appreciating the intention, the voice of the people I'm talking to. And my commitment to them every time is I want to elevate your voice, your understanding, your sensibility, your picture of the world. I used to do this show on KQRS way back in the day before I started here at KFAI. And back then it was a 10-minute show. So I had about an 8-minute interview with people. And the exciting thing about that was that when I brought guests on, I said, look, we got 10 minutes. Why don't you bring your statement, your comment, your thought, as if this was the last 10 minutes in existence. What is it that you want to say that is clearly something that must be said and that must be understood? And so let's approach this conversation with that degree of commitment to clarity and to honesty and to giving the very best of our thoughts and our feelings, our fears. And so that's how we try to continue this program. We want people to be clear and to be and go deep in their feeling, their understanding, to reflect their real awareness of what's happening with their work and with the world. We think it's valuable. Our voices matter, our lives matter, and we simply want to reflect that in the conversation with Al McFarlane. Well, so today, again, if you are listening in your car, on the radio, at home, got a minute, jump on your telephone or your computer, your desktop, and also check us out online at YouTube or on Facebook or LinkedIn. We're live on all those platforms. On either of those platforms, you can join the conversation by adding a question, a voice, a thought in the chat. I'd love to know where you are as well. So if you can go online with your phone or however you can do it and just say, hey, Al, I'm here in Winona, Minnesota. I'm here in Harare, Zimbabwe. I'm in San Juan, Puerto Rico. Wherever you are, let us know. Shout yourself out. Shout your voice, and we'd be glad to share that. Well, we've got a great program today, as always. We promise robust conversations. And today, my first guest, who's going to hang out with me for the hour, is Demitri McGee. Demitri McGee is one of the principals at Build Wealth Minnesota. And we're going to talk about the Build Wealth value proposition, its historic role in enabling people to become homeowners as a strategy for building wealth in our community. And not only are they working to support homeowners, they're in partnership now with one of the other legacy institutions in our community, North Point Health and Wellness, to talk about how we can be effective renters as well. So we're going to talk about both of those things. Demitri, good afternoon. Good to see you. How you doing, man?
Good afternoon. I'm doing good. How about yourself, Al?
I am really, really, really doing well. Thank you for joining us. Let's start off by just talking about the Build Wealth proposition. What is Build Wealth Minnesota? And give us the story.
All right, I got you. Thank you. And I appreciate having me on the show today. So Build Wealth Minnesota, we actually celebrated our 20th year anniversary last year. So Build Wealth is a nonprofit HUD approved CDFI, as well as a financial opportunity center. Build Wealth, man, I can say a lot about Build Wealth, but Build Wealth at its core, we start off with education. So we have a multitude of curriculums that cover everything from housing, education, credit, budgeting, just to say a few. We also have a renters readiness program, youth programming, employment services, as well as lending products. So ideally, a client can come in, and I like to think of us as kind of like a one-stop shop where we equip you with education. We also have all HUD certified housing counselors, including myself. So you can get the education, you can get the counseling, and then we also have the products for home ownership as well as renting and employment to do, I like to say, like a well-rounded wraparound service as far as finances go. That's my down and dirty one.
Sure. So what's the background? Set up the condition that Build Wealth attempts to resolve or address. And there are a variety of them. You mentioned them, but if you would just sort of lean back and say, here's why we came into this work. What was happening with wealth creation, with home ownership or lack thereof? What were the barriers that our people were experiencing that we may have thought were our individual problems, our own personal deficiencies that we've come to discover are systemic, at least in part, and that with help, we can find ways to get around them, get over them, get through them, but lay out that landscape as you understand it.
Absolutely. So thinking about 2004, when we first became a company, shortly after that, we went into a nationwide recession where housing products, housing mortgages, everything was really a mess. And my father, who's the founder of Build Wealth Minnesota, David McGee, he started this company really to help families in need that were going through that recession period. And I know he had a mortgage company prior to, so he solely was kind of focused on getting folks into mortgages and things of that nature. But once the recession hit, he saw a big need in how to educate families on how to not only get a house, but maintain a house, pay for mortgages, and then really at the core, keeping your family together. Because not only was it a housing crisis, but for the Black family in general, it was a really rough time, not knowing where you're going to live, foreclosures, all type of things, and even, struggles with ourselves as a family. So really teaching families and equipping them with the skills and the knowledge so that they can withstand crises. They can withstand a COVID-19. They can withstand different presidencies and things of that nature. And then providing it in a way where it's culturally relevant. We experience things differently as underserved community members. So finding a way to not only equip the traditional information to families, but finding an effective way where it's comprehended at a high level and that it could be utilized and used not only by you, but by your family members going forward. We service a whole family where we'll see the grandmother come in, and then the grandmother tells the granddaughter, and then the granddaughter tells the mom, and right there we service 3 generations of family through education and through providing them with financial services and housing services. So
So this idea, we had put that graphic up again, if you would, Jared. One of the signature products you have is 9,000 equities. What does 9,000 equities mean? That's an ambitious goal.
Yes.
What's the source of that, and what's the vision?
So with 9,000 equities, kind of piggybacking off of what I was just talking about, in Minnesota, amongst other states, Wisconsin, Iowa, we have some of the largest disparity gaps in Minnesota. Although the wealth in general in Minnesota looks good on paper, once you break it down a little further by the racial equity gaps, we have, if not the largest, it's bottom 3 as far as Black families and white families in a variety of different areas. That includes education, that includes home ownership, that includes just a number of things. But the 9,000 equity specifically comes out of that idea of seeing home ownership as a major target for how we accumulate wealth. So in our calculations, what that equity divide looked like, and I don't want to say the numbers because it changed since then, but what it looked like at that time was that there was a difference of about 9,000 families, white families versus Black families, that made up that difference in equity as far as home ownership. So we launched the 9,000 equities project or initiative, you should say, is to kind of close that gap. So a part of it, we have around 16 partners that include realtors, we have lenders, we have financial counselors, as well as products that go along with it. So we work together collectively as a team to not just stop at one organization, but adding what Bill Wealth does to a Keller Williams, into a PPL, into other folks like that, so that not only are we doing the work, but we're helping to support other organizations to do the work, because we all can't do it by ourselves. And I actually appreciate Al as well to being a messenger that's been helping us to send this message out as well. So at this point, we're well over 1,000 families. So we're making our mark, but there's still some more work to be done. And ideally, if we can get those 9,000 Black families in home ownership, I believe we can do a lot of damage as far as that equity gap that will transcend into some other areas. If we have happy homes and stable homes, and our kids should be a little bit more stable as well. If we're a part of the neighborhood and the community, then our schools do better. Then our taxes come in a little better. So it's just kind of like a snowball effect. If we can start with the wealth piece, start with the home ownership, I believe it can actually go in other areas, such as education and things of that nature.
Well, so you're now, among other things, leading up the rental readiness program at Build Wealth. Let's focus in on that. Where does that program fit within the pantheon of offerings at Build Wealth, and what's the unique set of applications being delivered to the community through the rental readiness program?
Nice, thank you. So with the renters piece, as much as we want folks to engage in home ownership, which we really do, It's just not always realistic for everybody, unfortunately. Some folks it's just, an income thing, credit thing, whatever have you. But sometimes folks simply don't want to purchase a house. It just is what it is. So the Renters Readiness Program, which we entitled Rent Smart, Wise, and Ready, that actually, similarly to Build Wealth in general, that was birthed out of the COVID-19 scenario, where Family Housing Fund contacted Build Wealth, and they asked us to develop a Renters Readiness Program. They had mentioned that, they seen us do some good work as far as financial literacy training and housing training. So on that, they gave us our first level of funding for me to start to develop it. I wrote it myself alongside with a array of other folks, multi-housing association, as well as like the community themselves. So although I was the author, this was a collaborative effort to create a product that can be good for not only families of color, but just underserved communities in general, as well as folks that kind of struggle in that renters readiness frame. What makes it unique to me is just starting there. A lot of the renters readiness programs that I studied, that I looked at, and that I know about, generally were created from scholars, so to speak, which is a great thing. But a lot of times those scholars, they're not on the ground, so they're researching what the text and what the literature says about it, but they're not of it in themselves. So with me being one of the authors, a person that has a research background too, I'm also a practitioner in this space. So I talk directly with clients every day that are dealing with these issues. I'm collaborating with other organizations that are doing these things as well. So my knowledge in the area, I would say, is unique because most folks are either a practitioner or a researcher. Me being both a practitioner and a researcher gives me the ability to not only research what the literature is saying, to see what science says, to see what the newest laws are, but I'm also on the ground and can directly apply what I research and what the field is saying to my clientele. And then taking it a bit further, working with programs like Family Housing Fund, who've been in the industry for a long time and have an embedded interest in this community, having Multi-Housing Association being a part of it as well, who govern and do a lot of the renters readiness stuff in the state. It gave me a lot of good insight. We work with folks like Housing Link, property management companies and things of that nature. So as I wrote it, in my mind, it wasn't just, I'm going to write this for the property managers, or I'm just going to write this for the renters. I wrote it with having both in mind. So what do you guys need from renters, landlords, and landlords? What do you need from tenants? So now when we create this product, it's reflecting both sides. So you give insights to both sides, and it's not one-sided, I would say, in my opinion. And, I could talk all day about it, but just, coming from a place of relationships as well. A lot of them just kind of talk about the rules, regulations. With the Rent Smart, Wise, and Ready, it anchors you in with the relationship being amongst the landlord, the property manager, as well as the tenants. So it's not one against the other, but it's how can we work as a team to communicate effectively better with one another, because communication goes a long way. Identifying steps to finding a place. And then, of course, once you're in that place, what do you do now? What, where is maintenance? How do you read a lease agreement? What is the security deposit, and how can I get the security deposit back? As well as the fair housing law. So being a HUD housing counselor, I'm equipped with the knowledge on fair housing laws. So we have to embed those into the curriculum as well, so that how to be a better renter on paper, but how do I be a better person in general with the knowledge on what renting is, what are the laws, what are the taxes, because a lot of folks, even landlords, don't know that you get tax rebates for paying rent. And then what are those timelines? So kind of to wrap it up, I think all of those things makes it unique because there's care provided in the curriculum. It was created out of love, created out of wanting folks to be better, rather than just here's a check to write a curriculum. But how can we really equip these families with that foundation to be better renters and hopefully homeowners one day? But you as a person and what goes along with their reports. A lot of folks don't know you can order your own renters history reports. You can order your own credit reports. So it takes not only the renting piece, but takes the financial literacy piece as well. And then we talk about the difference between homeownership and renting too. So we don't forget homeownership, but there's pros of both. There's cons of both. So we're going to tell you their full story. You, as a homeowner myself, there's some stuff I don't like about homeownership. I could go all day. Like I had a furnace break, and it's like, I got to pay $7,000 as a renter. You don't got to worry about that. However, if you broke it, that is someone else's asset. So you have to respect the asset and respect the landlord just as much as that landlord should respect you as a person that's helping his asset be maintained and helping his asset to make money. So it's a partnership.
I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. My guest is Demitri McGee. He runs the rental readiness program at Build Wealth Minnesota. And we're going to sit deep into that. You know, Demitri, thank you for being here. And as you're speaking, I'm seeing two sets of ideas bouncing around in my mind. And you really are the perfect person to have the examination of these two realities that run side by side and that are interconnected. In general, you know, you have to think that, you know, rental housing, obviously a big business, a lot of people are renting, and most people, I would say, rent successfully. And I say that because you don't hear about the rental experience except for that when there's a problem. And so the question is, in the overall rental environment, things generally go according to plan. People know what they're getting into or don't. Mostly they do. And landlords are business men and women who want to bring a product to the marketplace that delivers what it's promised to deliver in exchange for income and profit. Their motive is profit and building wealth. So that's kind of the understood, it's given that you don't think about. You kind of just go through your life knowing that if you needed to rent, if you're a kid or if you're an adult and decide you want to rent and not buy, there's all kinds of places out there. Prices vary, ways to get in. You kind of protect it, generally speaking. But what happens is that at the edges of the industry, you find aberrations, you know, fissures, breakdowns. And those edges that I think you are addressing are the edges of whenever something that is not business-like or that's bad business-like, like racial animus, racial discrimination, like illegal redlining activities, when those come into the picture, that creates a whole separate arena of activity that is other than the simple business proposition of, I want to rent, can you rent me a space? Or I want to buy, will you sell me a house? And so that's kind of the area that you all are looking at, is where the failure of what is normal takes place and why it takes place, and how much of that has to do with structural, historical issues, but how much of it also has to be laid to in not fully informed individuals, people that don't have both the experience and the knowledge to negotiate their own best interest in the marketplace. And it seems to me that's where Build Wealth is operating at that fault line. Does that make sense as a general description? So I think what you're saying is that And so because of what I described, people who find themselves on the margin, looking at not able to navigate the way they want to in the marketplace, will say the marketplace itself, the whole thing is corrupt, bad, and stacked against me. And that might not be true. I think the truth of the matter is that most people that are doing business are doing good business, but there are some people with other motives and other histories and other, strategies that impede full access and equity for everybody in the marketplace. So I'm just throwing that out as something to talk about. What does it sound like to you? Am I reading this thing right or wrong? What do you think, Demitri?
On my end, I think it's a mix of both. So I can't say it's neither or either or. I would say from a structural space, going back to things like you talked about as far as redlining and things of that nature, and even just education in general, I think there's a part of that in there for sure, where historically, when you're locked out of a space or you're pushed out of a space and pushed into spaces, it creates a level of, I don't want to use the word hate, but it creates a level of animosity, I would say. So as you're trying to, and speaking from underserved communities from that perspective, which could be, African American families, it could be Mexican, it could be some of our East African families, but when you have a history of being treated poorly, a history of being X'd out, a history of being blocked from receiving education in certain areas like renting, what it looks like as you fast forward to like kind of today's time, it looks like there is a level or a lack of education and things of that nature. But what it really comes from is kind of that history, to where if for generations, we're just simply not giving you access and not doing that. By the time we finally do get access, now there's a level of animosity to where there's a lack of respect going towards, like what I was saying in the last question. I think it's a lack of understanding and a lack of respect when it comes to like the relationships involved in rental, to where you're scared of the landlord as a kid. All you know is that the landlord is coming to kick you out. So if I think that the landlord is going to kick me out, there's a level of respect that I don't have for that landlord. So by the time it's time for me to be in my 20s and 30s, where it's time for me to rent a space, I don't care about your asset. I don't care if you got to pay for this. You're going to kick me out anyway. So why would I care? Why would I respect you when history shows you all don't respect me? Mm-hmm. So I think there's again a mix of lack of respect there, mm-hmm. which is what we really want to do, is kind of get that respect and that understanding back. But I think the history and the structural part leads to the education part and leads to the lack of the respect. Because it's only so long that you can go with being disrespected before you're like, all right, forget it. I'm gonna just do this. I'm gonna do what I want to do.
Right.
I also think the lack in wealth in general kind of leads to it too. For the most part, when I look at folks with lease violations and with evictions, things of that nature, a lot of time these are good folks that simply income is a barrier. Mm-hmm. They have a death in the family. They lose a job. They have kids, and it makes it difficult to work. Things of that nature, which I would say is part of a structural thing. But I would also say that sometimes if that happens and then that leads to a UD or an eviction, now when it's time to get a new place, it's difficult to get a new place. So you got to get a less than fair place now. So now you're getting slumlords. Now you're getting folks that are doing things in not the best fashion. So this whole time, mentally, you're like, first you kicked me out in a time when I was hurting. So there's a bad taste in my mouth with that. And then I get this slumlord who isn't fixing things on time, who isn't doing these things. Now my whole mentality about renting is flawed.
Mm-hmm.
It goes from kind of how you're talking about in the beginning, it goes from being that business transaction that is working well. Now there's animosity. Now I don't care about what I do. Now, shoot, again, you're going to kick me out anyway. Why should I respect what you have going on? And then from being the oppressed, but being the oppressor that's now seeing it, that isn't necessarily aware all the time of those things 60, 70 years ago, they think it's a clean slate.
Mm-hmm.
Where what redlining, that was in the 60s. Like you guys still mad about that? And there's a part of it that just, that angers us, that kind of like progresses it. But from the oppressor standpoint, it's like, why aren't you guys getting it yet?
Mm-hmm.
Why aren't you understand? Why are you still mad? Why are you still not doing what you're supposed to be? And that
it puts all the blame on the victims.
Exactly, where I won't say there's no blame. So don't quote me on that one. But given that history, it's just really difficult to pull yourself out of that hole, and your family as well, because it's not just you going through it. It's you. And then I can get into a whole other things with fathers not being there, with families being torn apart, and all of those things that also, integrate into these things. But it's just a melting pot of things that kind of lead us astray, especially families, BIPOC communities, and families of color. And that's really what that 9,000 equities piece is about, as well as this renter's readiness piece. We figure if we can, at the very least, equip you with the knowledge and try to mend that relationship that we're just talking about, I think a lot of folks are in a good space. Because most landlords, they don't necessarily want to kick you out. If they're a pretty good landlord, if
you're paying your rent,
they want you to stay there as long as you can. That's easy for them. That's ideal. But once you have those challenges, we get scared sometimes. Where it's like, ooh, I'm gonna pay my rent late this month, so I'm gonna ignore my landlord. I'm gonna avoid them. When a lot of times communication goes a long way. So I think that communication piece is really big, is huge, as well as just acknowledging both sides. Like, yes, landlords have a history of doing some bad things. Tenants have a history of doing some bad things. But how do we work together as a landlord and tenant today in this space together, so to say, yes, that happened, but what do we do now? How do we work together to be successful in this business venture to where all parties win? And I'm hoping I'm not going on too much of a tangent with you, Al.
Good information. I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. My guest is Demitri McGee. He leads the rental readiness program over at Build Wealth, Minnesota. I think the formal name of it is Build Wealth, Rent Smart, Wise, and Ready. It's an online program, I think. You can talk about that. And you partner with North Point Health and Wellness. Talk about how that partnership emerged and what does it mean to have two legacy institutions bring resources and reach together to serve a common goal, and that is the empowerment of families in our community.
Yes, sir. So with North Point, we've always been neighbors with North Point. Prior to being in the building we are now, is formerly the Thor building, but now the RSC building. We actually are in the same building now. So with North Point, we've partnered in the past doing financial literacy education to some of their clients. So there's always been some collaborative efforts between the two. Once they kind of had like some changes in leadership, we had met with Miss Linda Bryant, who is the Director of Programs and Services. She came and sat down with myself and Jeffrey Robinson, who is our Senior Program Director. And we just started off with a conversation. About, hey, we're in the same building. What we gonna do? And we just came to the realization that we have not only some overlapping clients, but we also have overlapping ideas on how we want to benefit our community. In this area, you got places like Estes, you got places like the Urban League, Build Wealth, META, and all these spaces. So we, as a whole, in this area, have been working on ways to collaborate. One thing that Linda had brought to the table is really an emphasis on rental assistance in general, and folks kind of struggling with rental. And this goes back since COVID. COVID kind of left us in a space where it was a moratorium where folks didn't have to pay rent for a while. So landlords was waiting. They were waiting for this to end. And once the moratorium lifted, there were a lot of people facing evictions, a lot of folks that were in hardship in general, because the job market crashed as well a little bit. So it was a mixture of things. So the partnership with North Point specifically, they saw that issue just like we saw that issue. So we worked together on a way to where we can provide some renters readiness education, to combine that with some of the products that North Point has, as far as rental assistance and things of that nature, so that it's not just one part where, because on our end, it's like, we can equip you with the knowledge, and we know some resources, we know some folks we can send you to, but having North Point to kind of back us, to say, not only do you get the education, but you also get these renters assistance products to partner with the education. So in my opinion, I think it's a perfect partnership. We're both, like you said, we've both been in the community for decades at this point, but really locking in. And I really respect North Point and Linda Bryant as well for just not reinventing the wheel. They said, Build Wealth, we know you all do good in this space. We know you have this product. Rather than us just doing our own thing, how can we collaborate together and do this together? Folks can just go right upstairs, like they're on the 5th floor, we're on the 1st floor. So they can, there's a direct relationship where it's not just someone you don't know. There's a nice handoff to do so. And again, I think the partnership, it was just a matter of time, in my opinion, before we would have to come together to work together to do something like this. And with the plans to just do more, like right now, we're just kind of, I don't want to say pilot, but kind of in a pilot-like phase. See how it goes. Let's see if this is beneficial and if this helps our family, with the hope for us to just do more, do bigger, do better, to hopefully expand it out further into the Hennepin County and into the state, and hopefully go national to where folks can be receiving similar products in other cities like Minneapolis, like a Detroit, St. Louis, things of that nature.
So I love the idea that you all have hit the sweet spot in terms of collaboration, because in doing so, you're just demonstrating a principle. And the principle is simply that we solve problems together, that we have to be together. And it's wonderful when institutions, businesses like North Point and Build Wealth Minnesota can find that space to work together to amplify each other's experience, each other's capability to provide solutions for our community. That's a wonderful thing. And it's a model that I think we should continue to try to elevate and show more how we can collaborate with each other. I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. I'm talking with Demitri McGee. He leads the Rental Readiness Center, Rental Readiness Program at Build Wealth Minnesota. And we'd love to have your comments. Those of you who are listening on KFAI or on any of the social media platforms, if you got a question, drop it in the chat. And shout out where you're listening from. Let us know where you are. If you want to join the conversation, put a note in the chat. If we can figure out how to get you on board, we will do that as well. Demitri, I always ask my guests to sort of tell their personal story. And, the idea for me is that here is Demitri McGee and Al McFarlane. Check that out. I guess two Black men with Irish names. Two Black men with Irish names in the St. Patrick's Day week. And that's interesting. That's a whole nother discussion that we could get into,
Right, that's
but talk about how you got started. How did this happen? How did you come up to your profession inside your family business?
nice. And that's a great question. So I also direct the youth program. So I have this with students all the time. So for me, if I'm being honest, I was in a space where I actually didn't necessarily want to work with my family. I kind of wanted to do my own path, so to speak. Even though, my father, he's always, big finance guy. He instilled in me the ability to be good at finances, to manage finances well, I might add. So really it starts kind of with that piece. When I was in high school, I took financial courses that are electives that, by the way, I want to say will be mandatory here shortly in the state of Minnesota. But I started off doing some things like that, but I ended up pivoting and going with psychology. So in college, I actually was a psychology major. I attended Clark Atlanta University for my first couple years. At Clark, I would say I really found myself just kind of being isolated, being down south, being at a HBCU. It gave me the opportunity to like how good are you really at managing finances when you don't got a job? So it forced me to find myself not only as a man, but to find myself as a Black man in this space and managing myself and governing myself accordingly. I excelled in the area of statistics and in kind of leadership roles. I ended up transferring back to the University of Minnesota as directed by my advisor there. I continued with psychology and did a minor in leadership. And while at the U, I took on an evaluation project where me and my dad kind of worked out a really nice project where the U of M's Cura department, which stands for Center for Urban and Regional Affairs, they do projects on a basis through the Humphreys. And I ended up doing a project with Build Wealth where I actually did an evaluation. So I used my statistics skills in undergrad and did a really nice project that later on was a big benefit to Build Wealth. So once I graduated, my dad was like, well, you did the evaluation on everything. Would you like to kind of be the data analyst for Build Wealth? So I started out being a data analyst where I would evaluate some of our programs and services and see where the pitfalls are, see what we can do better at. And then I ended up becoming a financial coach. So once I became a financial coach, I started coaching primarily with youth. So that lasted for some years. I ended up going to grad school based off the project I did with Cura and with Build Wealth. I ended up being in a program called Family Social Sciences. So that kind of sparked my research side. So on top of doing evaluations, I just started digging a lot deeper into financial programming. I ended up doing a thesis statement on how to create effective financial programs for families of color, specifically with Black families. So I did, an array of research. I found out there really wasn't a whole lot of research on Black families and financing. So my research is some of the foundational research in that area where I really had to connect the dots on how to effectively teach Black families, BIPOC community families, as well as how to teach finances in general, and then combine the two to create effective ways on how to teach Black families and families of color. I end up finishing that project. I go out and present at a bunch of symposiums and research conferences. So I got to kind of pick the brains of some of the top folks in the financial industry. They really liked my research because, again, there's really not a whole lot of research. So I found myself as like a 23-year-old in this space with 40, 50, 60-year-old folks and learning from them and learning what they have to say and really teaching them some things as well. Once I graduate, my dad's like, okay, so you got a master's now. How would you feel about directing programs? Because the U of M, one thing they do a really great job at A, creating researchers, and B, creating instructors. So I was in my program, we had to teach 3-hour-long classes. We had to structure them. We had to do a whole lot of things, internships. I ran research projects. I did all type of things that made my ability even better to come back to build wealth and say, I can take on these projects. I can use some of the structure that the U of M taught me. I can use some of the things I got from Clark as being a Black man and how HBCUs build up Black folks, and then combine it with my financial background, because I ended up getting certified in just about every area of finances as well. So everything from financial literacy, financial coaching, credit, student loans, budgeting, just an array of things, and combine it together. I eventually got my HUD certified housing counselor's license while I was creating the Rent Smart, Wise, and Ready curriculum. So all of these things work really well together to where I never thought I would be a youth director or to create a renters ratings curriculum. But I think all of these steps work together to equip me with the skill set to not only do it, but to create something that can be monumental for myself and for my community and those that we serve. I can keep going, but those are some of the things that really locked me in to being an expert in the field and to creating products that, like I said in the beginning, I'm a practitioner and a researcher. So my practice always comes from an informed space. It comes from doing the research, looking to see what the literature says, looking to see how it's done before me, and how can I use my practice and my financial coaching and housing counseling to bring it all together to create something that is not missing the traditional things, but it's also not missing the cultural stuff that these communities really need. And it could be the difference from me. I just I found it being in academia. I found myself trying to be the smartest in the room, which you know may or may not be true. But going from trying to look like I'm smart, trying to act like I'm smart, say the smart thing, to how can I say the thing that can communicate the best effectively. If it's with kids or a family, I'm going to do the research to find the best ways of communicating to you, not to sound smart, not to trick you, not to say a bunch of big words, but what's going to make you get it? What's going to get you the best opportunity to comprehend this traditional information that the literature says we lack? How can I get us back up to par with what tradition says in a cultural way that makes sense for us, that not only sticks with you, but and I tell my clients, my expectation is not for me to just teach somebody or to counsel somebody, but my expectation is to equip you with the knowledge, with the resources, so that now you don't even got to go to Demitri or David or Jeffrey. Now you're the person for your community, for your family. So I can't teach everybody, but if I equip you and I equip them with it, 100 folks, and they equip 10 to 100 folks. Now our community is, as a whole, we're building this together. Now we're holding each other accountable. Now we're up to par, because I don't want to be smarter than you. I want you to be just as smart. I want you to win too. I want you to be a homeowner too. I want you to have multiple cars, not just because I'm doing it, but I want us all to just level this playing field. Let's knock these equity gaps out of the water, to where my daughter, who's 6 now, I needed to be good for her. I needed to be good for my niece and nephews and things of that nature, so that it's just generational. We can continue this, continue to get better, so that hopefully in my daughter's lifetime, may not be mine, but if in my daughter's lifetime, that equity gap could at least lessen to where it's not 9,000, maybe it's just 1,000. I think we'll make our mark and do what we set out to do.
Is there a vision for meeting and exceeding the gap? What would it look like, Demitri McGee, if our people ended up discovering, because we've been activated by your voice and your vision, by the work of Build Wealth and North Point and agencies like that, activated by the positive experience of believing in ourselves and believing in our responsibility and our right to be healed and to be whole? How would that look? And what would that do to see the entire body of so-called marginalized, or at least the African-American and brown communities, really totally attuned to the principles of living with purpose, passion, and success in all respects, so that we have become homeowners and destroyed the gap, so that when we choose, if we choose, we use the rent strategy effectively, if that suits our purpose at the time. And what would that be like? What's your vision? You said your daughter, who's 6 now, when she's an adult, is there a point in time where you hope that there's no gap, but rather, having shattered the gap, what would the world be like? Where would we be as a people in the marketplace? What do you think?
Man, that's a great question. I never heard that question. That's a good one, Al. On my end, the word equality just screams out to me. When we're kids and we sing the national anthem and we do the Pledge of Allegiance, I think those words at that point will be true. Where there is equality, where we can truly not look at race. We could truly not look at gender. We can truly not look at sexual preferences and things of that nature. Because once that margin is gone, we're on equal playing fields. So it truly would be a beautiful thing. I hope we get there. But it would just look like just equality. I don't think we have as many issues in general if that is not in the back of our minds to say, you only got this because of XYZ, but you got it because you're good. You're good at it. And that's why you got it. You own a home because you did the work. Because it's just, again, a snowball effect. If we are equal as far as wealth, equal as far as home ownership, then education's going to rise. Then I think conflict will probably drop. I think unemployment will drop. I think businesses will be created and flourish a lot better, especially in our communities. I think it looks like things like George Floyd don't happen. I think, things of that nature is where my mind goes, because then it erases the context to an extent. And that's why we still fight for these things like reparations. That's why we still fight for equality, not just in race, but in other areas as well. But I think it looks like equality. That's just the word that keeps coming to my mind. Equity and equality is really hard to picture because of where we're at right now. And I can only imagine actually getting there. But I think it's a better space for us. It gives us more opportunities to just grow and get better now that that stuff's in the rearview mirror, which, of course, we always remember the history. But
let me bring another voice in for the last part of the program. My friend and colleague, Bill English, is standing by. And Bill, if you're there, I'm going to bring you on screen. But you got to look into the camera.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go. Bill, how you doing? Can you hear me, Bill?
Well, I'm doing pretty good, Al, and I apologize for having some conflicting things going on at the same time. But as you know, this is an important day for our community. And it's a day that they get informed that a week from next Monday night, from 6 to 8 at North Point, there's going to be a discussion of why Minneapolis has not gotten any allocation of affordable housing from the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency in 2 years, when we've got the largest amount of homelessness.
Pull your camera back a little bit. Pull your camera back a little bit.
Pardon? I'm sorry.
Pull your camera back a little bit.
Okay.
Yep, there we go. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
That's good.
So, anyway, this year, last year, the money to housing and everything. So they and it's used to give a allocation of affordable.
Now, Bill, I guess we're having trouble. Maybe Bill can get a fresh link and sign in again. Bill was invited to come on to invite people to another housing related seminar or discussion, which will be held in your building, actually next Monday night from 6 to 8 o'clock. And it's a discussion on the Upper Harbor proposal that he and some other North Side and Twin Cities business interests have created to come up with affordable housing in the Upper Harbor project. So he was going to invite people, but I can just tell you that that event, that community-wide meeting that he's calling for, will be held from 6 to 8 o'clock at the North Point conference room in the Thor building on the corner of Plymouth and Penn. And if you're interested in the economics, the business side of housing development, of housing, show up next Monday night. That's Monday the 24th. And show up at North Point. Bill's checking back in now, maybe because your voice was wobbling, Bill. Let's try it again. Bring Bill back in. Yeah, okay. Go ahead, Bill. We got about 3 minutes.
All right. I will simply say, they come out Monday night. Those who are concerned about housing,
yeah, Bill, we still don't have a good. I apologize to our listeners. We still don't have a good audio. The audio is warped, Bill, so apologies. But we're going to be live streaming tomorrow and Thursday as well, so we can bring you back to spend more time on that. Demitri, I was going to ask you. Thank you for hanging out with me on the. For the YouTube and social media viewers, your name says Demitri McGee, L.H.D. What do the L.H.D stand for? Let's explain that.
So it's in humane letters. So in Latin, they just kind of flip things a little bit. So it's a doctorate of humane letters. It's comparable to a doctorate in ministry. So I got my L.H.D from West Coast Bible College. So there was ministry or humane letters. With humane letters, the real difference is just really a doctorate of basically building your community, putting an impact, a lasting impact on your community and on individuals in general. So to me, it's very similar to a degree in ministry. It's just not specific to the church, so to speak. So does that make sense?
That makes sense to me. Listen, this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much. I'm Al McFarlane. My guest, Demitri McGee with Build Wealth Minnesota, the Rental Readiness Director. We tried to get you Bill English in to talk about the upcoming community-wide meeting next Monday at North Point Conference Center on Plymouth and Penn. But we thank you, listeners here on KFAI, those joining us by social media platforms. I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. We'll see you next time. Thank you.